InsideVision is brought to you by New England College of Optometry and Sector Media Group.
As a leader, we like to think we have the answers, but even if you don't have the answer, you tell people, hey, this is what I know, and I'm working as hard as I can to get you the best answer. And you got to put on, stiff upper lip and say, hey, we're going to get through this, and people see that and feel it. Because we've always embraced change, it's just another series of changes that we're going to embrace.
You never shut down, especially if you're a leader. You opened up the business, people trusted to work with you, people trusted you to serve them, and you can't just back out. As a leader, you have to take that fearless stance and guide your team, guide your members, guide your patients.
This is a critical time. This is something that we've never experienced, never thought I would ever experience something like this. As we move through this, it's about taking care of our employees, and it's about taking care of our patients. This is a great time and opportunity to look at your key foundational practices that you're doing and delivering a great patient experience.
This is Inside Vision for Wednesday, April 29th, 2020. Episode 3, Lead to Succeed. Critical Decision Making, with live guests from J&J Vision, Worldwide President Swami Raote, and from Costa Del Mar, the former CEO, Holly Rush. And we're back. Good morning, everybody. And good morning, Howard Purcell in Boston. How are you today?
Good morning, Eric. Great to be with you again. How's it going over there in New Jersey?
It's going well. We're on episode 3.
Really excited about it. I'm really excited about our guests today as well. We have some fantastic leaders. What's happening out there, and I think it's a great thing, is we're all starting to talk a lot more about the comeback. And I think that's encouraging. We're going to have to pace it right, but the reality is it's about now making plans for coming back. And, I can't think of a better subject than that critical decision-making, leadership. It becomes even more important at a time like this. I thought our opening guests did a great job of covering off on 3 areas that for me are critical when it comes to leadership: honesty, trust, compassion for your patients, for your staff. Those things become so critical right now. And all of us have had those leaders in our lives who have influenced in a big way. I'm sure you have, Eric, in your life, people who have influenced you as leaders. Yeah, and you think of those, anybody comes to mind for you who's really had that impact on
Well, you know what, even the people that we work with on a regular basis in the eye care industry, the 3 people in that show opened, are examples of people who are facing a challenge and finding opportunities and making decisions about this comeback, which is on. We can see around the country that in certain parts, Georgia, Texas, certain areas are coming on faster than others, so we've all got some time to adapt to this in some ways, but others have less. And I think we're going to be able to learn from those practices that are opening faster, see what they're doing, see what works, what doesn't work. But it seems like everybody's got the attitude that, all right, for better or worse, people need to be seen. The patients need to be seen. Staff need to go back to work. And there are a lot of decisions to make around these subjects.
I couldn't agree more. But, one of the big decisions is making sure we make people feel safe.
Yes.
I think in the end, that has so much to do with it. Look, there's pent up demand. We know that. But the real critical piece is going to be, can we make people feel safe coming back to our offices? And that's part of the leadership and part of the plan. For me, there's been so many leaders that have influenced me. And I guess, the key takeaways for me, I would say, are probably 2. One is surround yourself with a diversity of people who can bring diverse thinking, diverse perspectives to the table. It may be a bigger challenge because you're going to hear a lot of things that perhaps you don't want to hear, but it's important to hear those things. So for me, that's critical. And the other one, and I think we're going to hear a lot about that today, is how do you make those difficult decisions? How do you prioritize things? How do you say, okay, I've got 2 people sitting here, both of them making great points, both make a lot of sense. Is it just me because I'm smarter than people, so therefore I get to make that decision? No,
there's
really.
A lot of input that goes on, and I think what we're hearing from a lot of CEOs and a lot of people that are running the organizations are that it's a group decision, and nobody in this environment, everybody can take solace in the fact that nobody knows exactly what the plan is. So you take a lot of input, you make the best decision that you can in the moment with the information that you have, and then you have the flexibility to adjust and move on and let everybody in your organization know that that's the situation, it's fluid, and we're doing the best that we can to answer all these questions.
Yeah, I think that's so right. I mean, I think predictable has been replaced with
Right.
adaptable. That's kind of the new way we have to go here. And for me, it's always been, what is that kind of highest priority for you? For me, where I live today, it's student first. If we keep in mind that it's all about the student, then we're going to make those decisions and hopefully make the best decisions we can to support our priorities. And I think we have two great guests today who have been in those roles. They're high-profile leaders, and I know they're going to bring us some great perspective. So I don't think we wait any longer. Why don't you introduce our guests today?
No, absolutely. Bring them in. You saw it in the intro. We've got Holly Rush, formerly of Costa Del Mar, and we've got Swami Raote from Johnson & Johnson. Welcome, guys.
Oh, thank you so much for having us, guys. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Swami, great to have you here. Great to see you as well, doing some great things over at J&J. And I want to say, first of all, people may know I spent 13 and a half years of my life at Johnson & Johnson. It was a wonderful experience for me. But before you hear from me, I do want to thank you, all of you at J&J, not only for what you do in the vision care space, but for everything you're doing towards COVID-19. I know you guys are working on some great things in terms of vaccines. Congratulations. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. We're thrilled to have you here. And also Holly, one of my favorite people in this industry. She knows that. I've never been shy about that. I've had the pleasure of working with Holly in many different ways. She's an incredible leader. She's an instigator of change. She's someone who, for me, I've learned so much from spending time around. So happy to have both of you guys here. And I think we're going to dive right in because we've got lots of questions for you. And I know people would really like to hear from you. So, at a time like this, and Holly, maybe we'll let you start, but I think the obvious question here is, at a time like this, how do you deal with decision-making and leadership in these changing times and these challenging issues that everyone's facing? How do you look at it as a leader in trying to make those difficult decisions?
Well, first and foremost, Howard, I think I'm going to get myself a T-shirt that says "Instigator." I like that intro. Thank you.
I think it fits.
First on my list after this call is done. Well, I think in the setup we spoke already, and Eric, I think you mentioned it about the playbook for change and crisis management and challenging times. I think we can all recount as leaders times when we've experienced a crisis in the businesses that we've been asked to run or in our lives, and how we've navigated that. I'm not sure, though, that we've ever seen anything on the scale and the proportions of what we're facing today. But I think there are a lot of underlying principles of how we've operated in a time of change and challenge that absolutely can be applied. For me, I mean, I'm in a very different situation than Swami today. I've had about 6 months of a break from Costa. I wrapped up at the end of last year and have been fortunate enough to be able to focus on my core priorities right now, which start with family and then health and giving back as well. But I'm not in the day-to-day throes. So I have a little bit more of perspective or objectivity in things right now, which I feel really fortunate to have, but I'm also itching to help, which is why when you asked Howard to participate today, I couldn't say no to you first and foremost, but obviously there's a lot to give right now, and helping is what we're trying to do. A couple things that I would want to share. I mean, first and foremost, it's really about your mindset and choosing to stay positive when things are not so positive around you. So, for me, it's really about where do I get my information? Who do I get it from? And how do I make sure that the majority of those people that are in that network around me are positive thinkers that see opportunity when there's challenge. And I think that's really critical right now because we're bombarded with so much information. And as business leaders, you are in the throes of a lot of change. So keeping a clear mind and staying positive is key. And then again, you guys already touched on a lot of what you do in the time of a crisis. You've got to prioritize. You can't do everything. So you talked about before, Howard, making sure that your focus is on your students. That's priority number one. What do I need to do as a business leader first and foremost? I don't have to do everything, but I've got to do a few things really well. I love the quote from Captain Sully Sullenberger, who everybody knows is an American hero. He said at the end of the day, there was one thing he needed to do, and that was fly the plane. Okay, so what is our fly the plane as business leaders? Let's boil it down to those basics. The collaboration and the input from others. I think you guys mentioned about getting inputs from others, but then deciding what your plan is. using your instinct, your network, and your intellect to decide what's best for your business to move forward. Communicate. Cannot stress that enough with care and compassion. It's so important for leaders right now. And then last but not least, it's self-care. It's something that we don't talk a lot about as leaders. I think we're expected to be heroes and put on our cape every day and be strong. But the reality is the only way you can show up for your team, for your patients, for your customers, for your network is to be whole on the inside. So making sure you take extreme self-care, I think, is really important in times like this.
Holly, I love what you said about mindset right there, and it can be a challenge sometimes when everything's swirling around you to have the right mentality and just to reset yourself to make those decisions. And Swami, I'm wondering how those thoughts resonate with you, and in particular, when you're dealing with challenge like this, what do you do to set your mind right, and how do you face challenges? How would you advise people in that position today?
Yeah, Swami's got a big plane to fly, so he's got a lot of passengers on that plane.
Yeah. That's a critical decision, by the way. Sully had to make some critical decisions in that one.
Yeah. No, we have a big plane to fly, but what truly helps us is we have a 134-year-old history of going through multiple such crises. And we have a set of values which kind of grounds all of us together. So that helps us. And it's amazing when times are normal, people are kind of doing their own things in their own way. But whenever there is a crisis, people just know where to go towards and how to converge. And there is an internal playbook in J&J which automatically kind of comes forward, and everyone instinctively moves in the same direction. So I'm truly grateful for who we are and how those values were kind of instilled in this 140,000 odd people across the world. And more importantly, also how we engage with our customers, how we engage with our environment and absorb information from all over and share it across. So our playbook is in many ways simple. The first thing is take care of our own people. Make sure that our people are safe, our people are healthy. We account for them. We account for our customers. We just make sure that information keeps flowing back and forth. Being a global company, it helps us because if there is a crisis in one part of the world, we can always learn from it. We can find a way to transfer the learnings to other part of the world. That helps. And this particular thing started off in China, and we were watching. We had a crisis management team. The J&J playbook kicked into action. And as it started moving across the world, we were already kind of formulating our plans to figure out a way to deal with it. So the first thing is people. The second thing is our supplies. How do we ensure that products that so many of our people and customers depend upon, we find a way to protect that. And we'll take all decisions to try and make sure that there is business continuity, there is a product continuity. We're able to reach to our customers what they need. And the last thing is about prudence. How do we read the situation? How do we learn from each other? And while we might be a vision care business, we're also a part of a larger health company. And how do we make those trade-off choices? Because resources are limited and you want to make sure that you're able to bring them to bear where you can make the maximum possible impact. And one example of that is, yes, I have my own priorities as a vision care leader, but someone will take a call that, what is most important is vaccine, and how do we get all of those resources going, and at times find a way to contribute across all our operating companies, because this is a bigger goal for humanity that all of us need to work towards. So there is always a little bit of give and take. It's never a perfect thing, but I would say people first, making sure that they're healthy, they're safe, they are able to take care of their families, they are connected with the customers, our supplies, and making sure that we're doing everything possible to deliver those to people who count on us. And lastly, what are the trade-offs that we make internally so that we can have a bigger impact, not necessarily individual business or individual business unit impact. There are things which are bigger for humanity at this point of time, and we just need to coalesce and make sure that we're able to contribute to that cause as well.
Wow. So words of wisdom for sure, not only for a big company like yours, but for all of us to heed. Swami, you referenced, I think, the Credo when you were talking about some prioritizations. And I know for anybody who's spent any time at J&J, the Credo is just that guiding document. It's such a critical component. And you mentioned about the people who use the products, the employees, The environment, I know, is a critical component to the credo. And I always found it interesting that the stockholders or the shareholders were at the bottom of the list on the credo. And I'm sure you get this question all the time, but how can you possibly put the shareholders at the bottom of your list? And I know I've gotten the answer to this one I've asked before, but I'm going to let you answer this too, because it was the first question I had when I looked at that. It seems inconsistent with what we see in today's business world, but yet of the 4 or 5 priorities, it comes at the bottom. How is that possible, and how has Johnson & Johnson made that work?
I think if you look at General Johnson, and when he wrote the credo, he was the single stockholder, right? And the core principle of the credo is, if I figure out a way to take care of my customers and what they need, if I figure out a way to take care of my employees and what they need, if I figure out a way to take care of my suppliers and distributors whom I depend upon, if I figure out, I don't think we can completely address the issues of the world, but if the community around us, if we are able to address their issues, there is that fundamental self-belief that I will get taken care of. And he was the single shareholder when he put himself the last. So the premise is, if I take care of you and if I think about what's important to you, you will think about me. And it needs to start off with that core belief that I trust you and I need to find a way of helping you, and you will find a way of helping me.
Fantastic. Thank you. Take care of those others and the shareholders will be fine. I think that's the message. And, we all have our own credos. We all should be building those own ways that we prioritize. And I'm sure, Holly, for you and the leadership roles you've been in, I wanted you to comment perhaps on that, but also on the idea of communication. When you don't have all the answers as a leader, that's a difficult position to be in. As leaders, we like to have the answers. People rely on us for those answers. So you mentioned communication. I think we all agree how critical it is, but as a leader, how do you deal with communicating in an environment where you don't have all the answers?
Well, I love what Swami said, and it resonates on so many levels. I'm sure for a lot of us, this notion of people before profits. And it doesn't mean that our business indicators, our results are not important. That's why we are leading businesses. It's what we're ultimately responsible for. But at the end of the day, it's our people, whether it's our employees or it's our partners or our customers or our stakeholders or community, that are really the enablers of those results. So what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Personal philosophy for me is it's people before profits. And that's, goes back to what you said earlier, Howard, about you've got to have that focus on your students right now. That's who you serve. And if you do that, everything else will take care of itself. So a lot of really common themes here, I think, that we've already touched on. In terms of communication, I've always been a big believer that you really can't over communicate, especially in a challenging time or a crisis. This is probably, the other end of the spectrum. So in good times, we need to be communicating, but in crisis periods, we need to be over communicating. But it's really about showing up in that moment with positivity, with calm confidence. One of the things I took away from last week's session, InsideVision, was how calm both Alessandro and Jamie projected when they were talking about the crisis and what's happening for their companies on their most precious asset, which is people. And you didn't see the duck paddling underneath the water. You got a sense that things were going to be okay. And so as leaders, even if we don't have all the answers, showing up, having the right mindset and projecting that calm confidence, I think that's first and foremost right now, and being out in front in this messaging. I think also as business leaders, there really can't be any confusion about who's in charge right now. I think when there's too many people communicating at the audience, and sometimes those White House briefings are a good example of that every night, you're kind of like, okay, well, who's really calling the shots here? So you gather your information from your network, from your top leaders, from whoever's advising you. But at the end of the day, as a business leader, you're out in front. So finding ways, really interesting, creative ways to connect with your constituents right now and do it consistently and be prepared to go the distance, because you've heard it already. This is not a sprint, it's a marathon, and you're the person who's in charge.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
Holly, along those lines, how do you, with so many variables happening, and the boardroom is looking at you, or your staff is looking at you, you need to command that respect. Somebody has to be in charge, but you also have to be sympathetic to their situation, and then still get everybody to follow your lead and execute the tasks that you've decided are the most important. How do you tread that balance? So whether it's fear or respect or understanding. I think you're right, Alessandro, and our guest last week, and Jamie definitely exemplified that calm that makes you respect them, or be confident in them. What are your thoughts on those notions?
I'm going to go back to mindset again. I think if you're aware of how you're showing up, if you're approaching things, knowing your audience and what they need from you, you're in the moment. There's no place for ego right now. Really zero place for ego. It's really all about care and compassion for the situation, for people's individual circumstances, for the health and well-being of those around us. So just showing up with a positive mindset, not overly positive, we're not talking about rainbows and unicorns right now. We're talking about, finding the optimism and the hope and giving people an opportunity to believe in something and to move forward. And so, again, you're not going to have all the answers. And sometimes we get asked the tough questions where we don't have clarity on something. And I think it's important in a time like this to say, we're really considering that, but we've never been here before, and we want to make the right decision. So it's on our priority list, and we're committed to coming back in the next few weeks to address that. We know it's a top priority, and then doing what you say you're going to do. I think the biggest thing right now is that leaders need to be authentic and then do what they say they're going to do. That's what really builds trust in your communication.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Holly on that, just the trust side. In fact, Swami, for you've got a large team, and it doesn't really matter if you have a large team or a small team. With this environment of furloughing and layoffs and uncertainty, how do you maintain the trust and loyalty of your people? I mean, that's such a critical component today, but such a big challenge. I mean, we've had people who've worked for us for 25, 30 years, and we would never have considered furloughing or laying off, but given the current environment, some have had to do it. What words would you have, or how are you trying to maintain that trust and loyalty of your people through these very difficult and uncertain times?
I think the most important thing, and in addition to what Holly said, I would say, how do you stay with your purpose constantly through good times and bad? You always make some tactical adjustments, but you do not allow people to waver from your purpose. And making sure that you're also addressing the needs of the moment, but reminding people of what are we here for and how do we stay the course is a balance. And that balance is going to be very important. And how do we create not just one leader, but multiple leaders across the globe is another thing which is going to be critically important. Because the more we learn to harness system intelligence and how context and variables change across the world without the purpose being diluted, because the answers could be different, but the purpose has to be the same. The themes are again similar, but how you execute could be addressing a specific context. And getting all the people together, giving their leadership a voice as to how are they addressing the situation, creating multiple leaders in situations like this, again, kind of, raises the system game and gives people focus and the purpose and the, just the way to power their way through this. And they become the beacons of hope, because what we want is multiple beacons of hope. We do not necessarily want one beacon of hope. And what we want is people who are going to be translating our purpose in appropriate ways across the world. And that's the best way to keep people engaged. And there is a balance between empathy and still not giving up on what we are here to do from a long-term perspective. So always making those small concessions, but reminding people of what we are here for is going to be very critical.
Well, I'm pretty sure you are that beacon of hope at J&J and probably at home as well. So thank you for that those inspiring words. You know, I think it's at times like this where really people really shine. Their true leaders really step up. You see people, you know, really a lot. You learn a lot about people in situations like this. Holly, everyone I've ever met who's ever worked for you is so loyal to you, trusts you so much. And I'm sure you're happy to hear that, but I hear it over and over again from anybody who's ever worked for you. You know, we're at a difficult time now, but in general, how have you built that trust and loyalty through the years in people? What's the secret sauce here? Help us, because everyone who's ever worked for you just loves, you know, the opportunity to work for you.
Well, that makes my heart happy. Thank you, Howard. You know, I think it just goes back to what are your core beliefs as a leader, and being who you are, showing up authentically as who you are for other people every day and allowing them to do the same. That's really where it starts. And I'll go back to something I said earlier about, you know, personal credo or core belief system, and that people come before profits. So you can say that, but do you act in that way every day? And if you're faced with a choice, a tough choice, what choice do you make? And it's not always easy. And I think it comes with consistency over time. It's also a big commitment of time. You know, I look back at how I spent my time as a leader at you know, Costa or at Luxottica while I was there. And I would say at least 30, if not 50% of every day was spent on people, on professional development, on challenges they were facing, on supporting them on, you know, life issues and work-life balance challenges, whatever it might be, with this underlying belief that if people bring their whole self and they're happy when they come to work, they will do extraordinary things. So that's where it comes from. It's something I believe in deeply. I was shown the way by leaders in my work experience from a very early point in my career. And I saw the good that can come from that. And it was something that I wanted to embody in my leadership as well.
Holly, you've talked about this time that you have right now where you're able to spend time with your family and focus on on leadership in many different ways. But you also have something to give and want to spend some time with people that are interested in learning from your experience. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that now?
Yeah, sure. And thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about it. I shared it very early on with Howard just to get some of his take on what I could maybe tweak and did it resonate. And he was kind enough to give me some input on it before I went live with it this week. But it really comes from this idea that, you know, and having this opportunity to focus on my core priorities right now, which are family and health. I've also had the chance to do a lot of reflection. And at the core, I am all of those things that I just described, but I'm also a leader. And in times like this, when it is challenging and there is a need for leadership, I have a very strong desire to jump in. And I'm kind of on the sidelines because I'm not sitting in the chair per se every day.
Right.
So I was just feeling like there was a lot more that I could do, and reflecting back on all of my years being a leader in the workforce per se, the thing that gave me the greatest sense of fulfillment was really being part of other people's journeys to success and helping them along the way. So just this week, I launched my own personal challenge, and it's called the 30 and 30 Challenge. And basically what it is looking at the next 30 days, how can I help 30 other professionals in a time of need? And I'm tapping into my network, people that know me and I know really well, and saying, introduce me to someone in your professional network that you think could either use business advice and support right now, a thought partner, or could really use career guidance. And there are no strings attached. It's just time together in the next 30 days to help navigate really uncharted waters. And that's really it in a nutshell.
What a fantastic offer. And I think we've had a graphic on the screen, correct? With some of that information. Yeah, so your email is out there, and I'm certain that many people will be reaching out to you to take advantage of your experience, and it's a very generous offer.
Oh, I know they will, but you're going to have to change the name, Holly, because it's going to be 29 and 30. Because I have already raised. I'm raising 28.
Listen.
It's going fast.
The more the merrier. If this is in perpetuity, if it's an evergreen initiative for me, I'm thrilled to be able to be part of, like I said, other people's stories and to be able to help along the way. It's selfish in some respects because I miss all of you. Again, there's only so much homeschooling and Netflix binging. So, I would just love to be a part of what's happening today and try and make a positive impact wherever I can.
Well, Eric, obviously another reason why Holly is such an amazing leader. And you mentioned humility, and perhaps I'm going to throw it over to Swami for a minute and maybe put him on the spot a little bit. Most common mistakes to avoid, Swami? I mean, being leaders, we all have to admit along the way somewhere we've had a few bumps, we've had some things happen, and humility is important. But perhaps advice for people who are leaders out there that, listen, we all make mistakes. What are those ones, particularly as it relates to leadership, that you've learned along the way that are perhaps things to help others avoid?
You know what? I joined healthcare from Wall Street, and I came in with all the answers, and I had to be the first person. I had to be the quickest on the draw, and everyone's view mattered, but not really. I just needed to find different ways to shred to pieces. I think coming to J&J was a little bit of taming of the shrew, and the first 4 or 5 years, quite frankly, it was excruciating journey for me. But I really appreciate the supervisors that I had during those times who forced me to think differently and who forced me to harness smarts of people around me versus just relying on your own logic. And it's this concept about, I get fascinated by this the quantum computing concept. It's not about 0 or 1. It's an existence between the two. The answer depends upon how many variables are you looking at, and it could be either or depending upon the job that needs to be done. And I'm truly grateful for all the people who have suffered me when I was not at my best and for helping me on that journey. But I do believe that allowing people to bloom and making sure that everyone's voice is heard really improves the decision. And the ownership that it comes along with it is phenomenal. It's never the best decision. It's how much people believe in it and are willing to give their best to try and execute it. That's what makes the difference. It's never the actual absolute brilliance of a decision. It's the ownership and followership of the people who are willing to give everything to make things happen.
Wow. That's powerful words, but words that we should all live by. Thank you for that. And Holly, I'm going to give you a chance to maybe weigh in on the same one. What advice might you have of perhaps, opportunities or mistakes to avoid when, particularly as it relates to leadership and leadership in critical decision making?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think first is believing that you have to have all the answers. As a leader, you find yourself all of a sudden in this position of responsibility, and whether it's people or revenues or the business complexity, and you just feel like if I don't have the answer, somehow maybe I shouldn't be in this role. And so there early on, as Swami mentioned as well, I think you have a tendency to want to have an answer, whether you're confident in that or not, and it can really trip you up. So I think that first and foremost, as young leaders, I encourage them to really leverage their network and to listen and to gain insights from other people around you, and really surround yourself with the brightest people that you can, which will really challenge you and give you perspectives that you hadn't considered before, and then form a decision that you're confident in and you can go forward to. So that's first and foremost. I think the other challenge as a leader is making sure that we spend time cultivating our own personal network. It is really lonely at the top. I think everyone's heard that before. And because you're expected to have the answers and to be confident and project this sense of leadership and certainty, even when things are challenging, really challenging for you personally, that can be a very heavy weight to carry. And the way to lighten the load is to have a group of people, really diverse people outside of your business that you call on for support when times get tough. And it's really easy not to focus there when things are good. You're not really sowing that garden or cultivating that network the way that you should be. It's, oh yeah, I'll do that next week or next month. I don't have time for that call. I would say that is a critical lesson that I've learned, is that that is just as important as your day-to-day business leadership, because that feeds you, especially in times that are tough.
Wow. Absolutely. And I think for me, I've had those people in my life and they've become so critical, people you can lean on, people you can go to, listen to, you learn a lot. By the way, I think every leader that you've ever worked for as well has an influence on who you are, whether they be someone you had completely admired everything that they do, or perhaps not so much admired. You learn from both of those. And that's how we become leaders, by listening a lot, by observing, and by continuing to build our own strategies and approaches to things. So, wow. You know what, Eric, I'm going to have to go back and listen to this show over again. I know. It's just chock full of amazing stuff and
terrific insights. We're going to get a lot of great clips as we post throughout the week. We'll post some clips of some of the essence of this commentary, which is just invaluable.
I agree. So, you know what, as we start to kind of wind down here, I'm going to ask the two of you maybe any suggestions you would have for our listeners regarding any references, any reading materials, things that for you were sort of those guidebooks along the way, if it's people or specifics. We'd love to hear from you on any suggestions you might have for potential readings or references. And Swami, if you're okay, we'll start with Holly and let her kick it off, and then we'll come to you. Holly, any thoughts in that area?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to a tried and true, and it's a really simple thing that I read every morning, have for probably the better part of the last 10 years. It's a lot like VMail, which we all come to read first thing in the morning just to see what's happening in the industry around us. But it's very specific to leadership, and it's called Smart Brief on Leadership. So we don't always have time to read the way that we want to consume information the way that we want to. I find that smaller doses of the right information for me is manageable. I look forward to reading those things, and then I can deep dive if I've got the time and the interest there. Sitting down to read a good book has been a luxury for me in the last 10 years, but it's something I'm back to now and I'm really excited about. So this Smart Brief on Leadership really filled that void for me. If I couldn't sit down and read a great leadership book, I could easily take 15, 20 minutes and read through these short, I would call them snippets, and then deep dive into the articles that are most interesting. Now it's really relevant to leading during a crisis, and lots of different examples from public and private sectors that can really inspire a new way of thinking. I always find something in there to forward, either to a colleague, to a friend, either good advice or good inspiration to start the day.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I think we'll look out for that. It's what did you call it? Briefs
called Smart Brief on
Smart
Leadership.
Briefs on Leadership. All right. Wonderful. Thank you. Great tip. Appreciate that. Swami, thoughts that you have in this area? I'm sure you've got a lot of good references you utilize.
You know what? I've read a lot of books over the course of my life and career. Right now, I'm not into any books. I'm literally, because I've never seen, I've lived through multiple crises, economic crisis, healthcare crisis, natural disasters, but nothing has collided with this kind of a force. And I'm just making sure that I'm absorbing from the environment constantly, learning from all across the world, and making sure that our people are connected, grounded, and managing the adrenaline of the system. I mean, the system metabolism has gone so ferociously high, and that's what I like about J&J. It's the passion of the people which propels our business and our impact forward, but you also need to help them to realize that they have life to manage. And there are times when I'm trying to make sure that, they take time for themselves to attend to their family. It's been personal for some of our people. And it's important that we take time out to address some of those personal issues. There has been personal loss in many cases, and we just need to pull the system down a little bit to ensure that people are able to take that time out. But I would again just go back to the I'd probably ask them to read the Necco Proclamation, right? How do you
There you go.
how do you stay grounded in your values, but always keep thinking about the way you create value will change because life around us is changing. How we engage and interact with each other is changing. And we need to constantly keep thinking about don't change your value system, don't change who you are, but start thinking about how you are going to keep continuing to have that impact in a very different world that all of us will be stepping into. And just getting that feedback and just getting all the answers from the people, making sure that you're able to communicate it back to people is the most interesting thing that I could do right now. More than any book or anything else, how do you truly help people to be at their best and shape the new world? See it from multiple eyes, but shape it. And that's our future that we need to start taking really charge of and saying, how can we help people be practical and still continue to have that impact that all of us believe in?
Wow, spoken
So,
like
Howard,
a true leader. Yes, please, Holly.
yeah, no, I just want to underline something that we've talked about a couple of times, and I think if there's one thing that jumps out at me in this time, and Swami mentioned it, and we've touched on it a few times, it's this idea of self-care as a leader. It's not something we talk about a lot. It feels selfish to be thinking about self-care in a time like this. What Swami's talking about is very much care of others, which is compassion, and it's so noble, and it's exactly what amazing leaders do today. But in order to be able to do that, you have to take care of yourself first. It's that old saying of putting your oxygen mask on first before you help other people.
Yeah.
Is, whether that's meditation or time with family or exercise or sleep, whatever it is, your tank has got to be as full as possible right now because the world needs you. So starting from that as a premise for everything else we've talked about, to me, is so paramount right now.
Ali, I agree with that. I think that those things that you're talking about, exercise, even being outside, sunlight, can really reset your mind when you're in a state of overwhelm, which is where a lot of people are right now.
It's really hard to be there for other people when you haven't taken care of yourself, right?
Exactly what I was just going to say. We can't be a leader for anybody else if we're not in good shape ourselves. And it's such a great message actually to end on. And I want to, on behalf of InsideVision, thank the two of you. I know your schedules are both busy, be it with the kids and teaching and doing whatever you're doing today, or leading a large organization. To find time to be with us this morning, we appreciate so much. You've left us with so many great things to think about. It is clear to everyone who's listened to this show why the two of you are such great leaders. The compassion you have for people, the caring you have, the honesty, the trust that you provide in people. But to me, it comes down to the compassion and the sincere. I think both of you use that term about being sincere in what you do. Holly, good luck with everything that you're doing. And thank you for the offer you've made. That's an incredible offer that so many people will benefit from. We thank you. And I know lots of people are going to take you up on that. And Swami, we wish you and J&J the best. You guys are doing great work, not only just in the area of vision, but across the board. Both of you be well and your families be well. And thank you so much for being part of our morning and part of our listeners' morning. You've made a huge difference for a lot of people and we appreciate it. So thank you so much. Eric, you know what?
Thank you all.
Thank you
Thank you
very much.
Thank you both. Yes, Eric, we learned a lot today. And one thing I learned about is when you see a good leader, it's easy to pick them out of a crowd. These two are just so exemplary of this wonderful profession that we're in and the leaders that we have and their compassion and passion for patients and for everything that they do, their business. This is a great profession to be a part of. I've been, part of it since I was born. My dad being an optometrist, I didn't have much of a choice, but you know what? I wouldn't pick any other. And when you see it at times like this, where everybody's banding together and working together and giving back and wanting to support each other, if there's a silver lining in everything we're seeing, I think it's absolutely that. Quickly, before I throw it to you, I want to say next week, we got a great show in store. We're going to be really tackling this issue of healthcare, vision care plans, kind of where things going to go post-COVID, and just insights from two great leaders there as well. So I'm going to kick it back to you for one of our favorite parts of the show, something to think about. But again, I want to thank our guests so much. You guys are amazing. Appreciate it. Had a lot of fun today and learned a lot. So back to you, Eric.
Yeah, thanks so much, Howard, and good luck in your leadership role. over the next weeks and months at the New England College of Optometry. I know you have a lot on your shoulders there, and I'm sure that everybody there appreciates everything that you're doing, and everybody appreciates the forum that you've provided here for the industry. As we like to finish the show for the second time in a row now, we're going to Something to Think About, which is today provided by Dr. John Rumpakis. So Something to Think About comes now.
Thanks, Eric. The insights of the earlier sessions were very impactful. They say that people are born to be natural leaders or they're not. That's not something I actually agree with. In fact, I always find that oftentimes the leader in an organization isn't necessarily the person at the top or the business owner. It's not the CEO or the CFO. It could be somebody within the organization that truly is providing a lot of inspiration for the entire team. I do think, however, that anybody can develop really good leadership skills if they want to finely tune them, or if they're in a position now where they have to lead a part of the team or lead an entire organization. If I had to give my top 3 things that I think a good leader should do and the skill set that they should have, I would boil it down into a couple of things. Because remember, what a leader does is a leader is the person that helps us get from point A to point B to point C. So the very first thing that a leader has to have is have a very good vision of what they want to do. They have to be able to have a laser focus to be able to know what the organization needs. And if they can express that vision clearly and know what it is, that's going to help them be very effective. Number 2, they have to be able to communicate or articulate that vision to the rest of the team, because you're going to have various stakeholders in any type of an organization, whether it be a large business, a medium business, or a smaller business, even an optometric practice, right? You have the doctors, you have techs, you have receptionists, opticians, all different sorts of layers, but they're all stakeholders in the enterprise going to where it needs to go. So if I can have a clear vision, I can articulate it properly. And then the third step is learn how to build consensus. Understand that you may have people that dissent. Dissension's good, right? It helps you fine tune your goal. It helps to get all the views out onto the table. But once you get consensus, then you can start to be able to execute your plan. And as you build momentum and get enthusiasm behind it by generating some short-term wins in your plan, you can now really oftentimes achieve those goals very effectively and very efficiently. So if a leader is somebody that gets us from point A to point B and point C, articulate the vision, communicate it properly, execute it with broad consensus, build momentum with short-term wins. I think that anybody that can do those effectively can be a great leader. I also find just one thing to mention. Leadership's not a dictatorship, right? By being a leader, you're not dictating to everybody else. You're helping a team get to where they need to go. You're getting the business to where they need to go. And I think if you follow those steps, you'll find it to be very, very effective. Some general readings that I always like to talk about. I have 3 books that I always like to mention. Leading Change by John Cotter is a great book. Good to Great by Jim Collins is a second one. And then The Fifth Discipline by Peter Senge is also a nice one to kind of round out those top 3.
Thanks for watching Inside Vision. To receive updates about our programming, click subscribe.